Keith, how you doing, man?
Man, today's the best day of my life. How you doing, Ben?
You know what? I'm gonna keep that positive momentum going. It's definitely been a tough little morning here for everyone who's in here now. Thanks for sticking with us. We had some technical difficulty, unfortunately, with streaming software. It does have to happen to be quite buggy, but we're here. We think we're live, and we're happy to have you here with us today. We're talking AI job loss and all of the things attached to it, the stories that are kind of behind the scenes in terms of is this really because AI is taking people's jobs or is there more to it? All that good stuff. But Keith, should we start with the news?
Yeah, man, let's kick it off with just a little bit of news. I'm
Go
going to
after it.
play a little bit of a clip. I'm going to try to keep it short so that we don't have any issues. But this is from last a couple weeks ago. We had the president in the United States pardon CZ, the former CEO and founder of Binance. And on 60 Minutes, he did a 60 Minutes this weekend. And so he was asked the question of, why did he pardon this person? And so I wanted to quickly show the clip from that because
Do it up.
it's making some waves over the internet and it's pretty funny. All right. So she asked,
or something like that. And I heard it was a Biden witch hunt.
In 20
so basically he just doesn't know who he is. And he ended up saying something around the lines of like, he was told to pardon this person and that's why he did it. So that was my
Okay, yeah,
first piece of
we
news.
missed most of that, so I don't think anyone was able to hear it.
Oh,
But so she asked the question of like, why did she pardon him? And then he said because he was part of a witch hunt.
he said, "Okay, are you ready? I don't know who he is." And then he said that part there, yeah.
Damn,
Um, so yeah, he was
that's
just like, I don't know this guy,
that's
but
crazy. Well, then that makes me even more conspiratorial. Where if he doesn't even know who he is, like that's
yeah,
I
she
don't even know
kind
how to
of
interpret that.
grilled him a little bit about that because she's like, okay, well, but your family's deep in crypto, so does that have something to do with that then? um, so anyways, that was that news piece. Next news piece, um, we're having some issues in the commercial real estate market here in the United States. It turns out that the delinquency rate on commercial mortgage-backed securities for offices has surged to a high of 11.8%, which is now a full percentage point above the post 2008 financial crisis level. Now, this is specifically for office buildings, but you're seeing it across a lot of all of commercial real estate in the United States is having this surge in the delinquency rates. So this is a pretty bad scenario. It's not really all that surprising considering what has happened since 2020. We had in 2020 rates were at zero, and a lot of people and businesses went out and got loans to go and acquire properties at that 0% rate. But in the commercial real estate business, you're not necessarily always going to get a fixed rate on that loan. So you're going to have an adjustable rate mortgage, an ARM, on these office buildings that were being purchased during that time. You probably had a bunch of cowboys saying, "Oh, office buildings are super cheap right now. Let's go up and buy them," without thinking about the fact that people weren't necessarily going to come back into these offices at all.
Mhm.
And so now we've got this scenario where what have interest rates done since 2020? They had risen very drastically. We had big hikes into 2022. And then from there, we started to very slowly start to roll the rates back down. But over that 3-year period where rates were really high, these office buildings have not been able to cover their mortgage payments. And so this is what we're starting to see that coming to roost here. And it all ties into some of the other stuff that we're seeing. So I'll move into that next piece that we have, which is this repo operation that just took place um, on Friday. We had the Fed inject around, what is it, 29.4 billion dollars into the repo market as an attempt to help provide liquidity to the banking system. So we're starting to see some cracks show across all of um, our markets right now, and this was a pretty big deal because we haven't had an injection like this since 2020. And really, you would want to look at like 2019 when it happened there as well, because that happened before the crisis, and so this looks a little bit more like that moment. But anyways, just so you can kind of graphically see here, this $29 billion injection of liquidity into the banking system from the Fed. And I'll quickly talk about like what this means.
Yeah, please.
So banks will lend to each other overnight, and this is, by the way, to the best that I can explain it. But banks and primary dealers, which are just big financial institutions, were short on cash on Friday. Some of this could have been because of month end funding pressures, right? Basically, meaning that there are regulatory ratios that banks have to meet at the end of every month. And if they're not at those levels, then they're going to have to borrow cash from the Fed in order to meet those requirements. And so the way that this borrowing really goes down is that these banks, they hold treasuries. And so they will park these treasuries at the Fed, and the Fed will give them cash. And then these banks will then pay that cash back with interest to buy those securities back from the Fed again. And this is why it's called a repurchase agreement. So, anyways, this kind of a scenario happens when there's some sort of funding stress. So, banks can't easily get short term cash anywhere else. So, then they'll go to the Fed for money. Um, And, the other thing that's kind of playing into this is that we've had the Fed quantitative tightening for quite some time by letting mortgage-backed securities roll off of the balance sheet. And this is why it still ties into that previous thing that we were talking about, because when the Fed is not stepping in and buying these commercial-backed security, these mortgage-backed securities, then the rates on those securities can start to rise as the demand for them essentially is naturally falling off if the Fed is not continuing to buy them. So in general, like there's just a lot of cash that's coming out of the banking system. And because of that, rates are getting higher in the short term funding space as well. And this is what happened here was the Fed just kind of stepped in to say, okay, look, there's not a lot of cash in the system. Here you go. Give us your treasuries for a little bit and you'll buy them back on Monday with a little bit of interest and we'll act like nothing happened. So, anyways, just some cracks starting to show in the uh, liquidity of the financial system at the moment, and definitely something worth keeping an eye on.
Without a doubt, and I think that we've mentioned this in previous episodes too, where you mentioned the quantitative tightening, and they'll probably shift to easing in the near future here, not too far away. Turn on the money printer and inject more liquidity into the system, and it's crazy to think about some of the stuff we're going to talk about today too, as well, where like all this stuff's going on, and they still basically have to print money, which bodes well for a lot of asset classes that we talk about all the time, like crypto, Bitcoin, et cetera. That money typically flows to higher risk assets. So that's definitely not a good sign. Like, is that not the bank's job to make sure that they stay within those limits?
The limits of the. I'm sorry, I missed you on that.
You're saying so you mentioned that the fact that they had to give them money, it could be because they were
Uh,
beyond the limits that they have to
yeah,
stay within a monthly basis. Is that not their job?
yeah, yeah. It is their job, and the thing about it that's made it so much more different since 2020, funny enough, is that I'm pretty sure the only regulatory requirement is what's called the supplementary leverage ratio. And I say it's the only thing, it's the main thing now. Whereas before 2020, there were like actual reserve requirements based upon, the deposits that people had at the bank.
Mm,
Um, Now it's a little bit different. That reserve requirement was lowered to zero during 2020, and then from that point forward, they use these different types of regulatory guidance for how to manage liquidity in the system. And so now it's more about like how much equity the bank has versus how much leverage they have in loans versus instead of it actually being just the deposits. It's like if they've got other ways that they're bringing equity in, they can uh, continue to loan out money and stuff like that. So
got it, got it. Yeah, 2020 really showed, to me at least, how like fake this whole thing was by the fact that they were able to like prop it up so fast after things crashed. It rebounded incredibly quickly. Like I remember getting a lot of texts from people being like, "Are you going to buy stocks? Are you going to buy stocks?" And I'm like, if I had money, I would, because I do think that they're going to forcefully push it back up. And it's one of those things where they really will step in by any means necessary to make sure that things don't collapse. And I think one of the things they're going to have to do is inject a ton of liquidity into the system, turn on the money printer, and Powell's talked about that stuff a lot. You actually live streamed his announcement of the most recent decision, and he made a very big point of coming out and saying that December rate cut is not guaranteed. Like, he made that point quite a few times.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to see what the ultimate impact is. But do you have any more additional news?
No, I'll just tap on the one other thing that Scott Bessent said, which is the Treasury Secretary in the United States. Quick little meme kind of thing. He tapped on and said, and this is kind of political, but that's not the point. He said, 17 years after the white paper, the Bitcoin network is still operational and more resilient than ever.
Mm,
Bitcoin never shuts down. The Senate Democrats could learn something from that, he said. Now, the point of this to me is that we have the Treasury Secretary, basically what someone said down here, bull posting um, Bitcoin, right? So yeah, this guy said the Treasury Secretary is bull posting Bitcoin and you're bearish. Um, like just this concept of someone who's so important in the financial system in the United States, like actually making a point about Bitcoin and why it has use is very, very interesting and something that's absolutely unprecedented. So
yeah,
I
it
just wanted to
makes
point
you
that out.
definitely makes no, that's the big one. Definitely makes you think that they've got something in their plans for Bitcoin to be saying that publicly, and
Mhm.
that's definitely a very big deal. And somebody we've talked about multiple times in the show, Peter Thiel. I saw an interview with him recently about his opinions on Bitcoin, and he's flipped a lot from that video that we showed a few episodes back where he was saying how Bitcoin is the future, and he's like, they've uh they've infiltrated the people that we wanted to avoid. They now control it. So he's not as bullish on Bitcoin. So definitely interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy to think that that person would be tweeting so explicitly about the support of Bitcoin. Like, you couldn't have dreamed of that last cycle. Like, that would not have been possible.
Yeah. And all of this stuff is so funny with people. I think Jack Dorsey also came out and said something about
Mhm.
like Naval Ravikant even came out and said, Bitcoin isn't what it is,
Supposed
what
to
it was
be.
supposed to be anymore. And I'm like, dude, uh, it was never about that.
No.
But, it's interesting to see though. I mean, and I think we're going to continue to see that. We're going to continue to see that the real use case for this technology is transparency and immutable records of history, right? So, you know, privacy, freedom, technology, and we'll talk about maybe some Zcash in a later episode.
Mhm.
I think that's secondary to what the use cases are for blockchain and distributed ledger.
No, without a doubt. Yeah, I think that's you could have your best case scenario glasses on and think that it was gonna be something different than this, but I think, like, this was something that I feel like you had to have been able to see that institutions were gonna get more and more involved. Like, what was the alternative? Like, did people really think that we were gonna bond together and be like, we can kick them out of the system? Like, we don't have the ability to communicate at scale like that, or the
Mhm.
trust. Because I think about that a lot, where, like, theoretically, the power structures, they are all rooted in fear, right? Because we theoretically could pick a currency and say this is what we're all using, but not enough people would do it because they'd be afraid of losing their job or whatever it was, making it nearly impossible for it to not be governed by the power structures that have convinced everyone that you have to listen to them.
Yeah, this is always my number one thing in thinking about like, okay, so what does the world of of a successful Bitcoin at scale with this thesis in mind, right? Like, okay, so now you have a monetary network that no one controls that becomes the primary means of payment and essentially, governance for the entire world. Like, what does that world actually look like? It looks like anarchy, if you ask me. And I just don't think that that's like a realistic like end goal for what we're trying to do with this new currency. And I'm sure that's going to get a lot of clapback. But really, like, what does Bitcoin look like if it's $100 million per Bitcoin and there's no other, competitor to that? Like the people who own all that Bitcoin become the most powerful people in the world. And who are those people other than potentially, these same institutions that are running things now, but now with a way greater, bigger gap in the amount of wealth that they hold over the rest of people. So that was always going to be what was going to happen if Bitcoin is the only answer to the issues that we have in our monetary system today.
Totally. Yeah, I think that we can There's so many ways you can take it. I think we're gonna talk about Bitcoin a lot throughout the show, so maybe we'll move on to something else,
Yeah.
because we'll do more Bitcoin episodes in the future. I wanna bring on people who are more, like, Bitcoin-focused creators to kinda ask them these questions, because I've noticed that in their communities, like, they don't usually get challenged, like, because if you're in most communities that have already bought into the vision that the crypto token or currency or blockchain, whatever, is pushing, like, they don't usually get challenged that frequently in terms of, like especially Bitcoin. Bitcoin kinda seems untouchable in a lot of people's eyes, so I'd love to get on more Bitcoin people to discuss this, but do you have any other news, or should we move into the main
Nah, man.
topic?
Let's get into that main topic.
Cool. Okay, so today the main topic is you click the video, you know what it is. We're talking about AI job loss. This is one of the topic that I think has reached every level of person. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, your friends or someone you know has been impacted by this, or you're at least hearing about it on the internet. I think that's the most impactful thing, is that you really can't escape it online. Everybody is talking about AI, the AI bubble, how it's going to impact your job, and everyone's saying that AI is taking all the jobs. And so when these big companies are doing these mass layoffs, the story that they're spinning is the fact that it's AI is the reason for these jobs. And while that may be true, it doesn't mean that AI itself is performing the job that of the person who's getting fired, right? Which is what they want you to think, is that okay, these jobs are being taken by AI, and it's not directly being taken by AI. It's largely being taken by decisions that are attached to AI and things that were done in 2020, like we mentioned. So I have one video that I want to share, which was really one of the big inspirations for this episode in particular. So let me share it. It's this guy who he did a really good job, and then we're going to dissect it and dive into everything. But here it is. So this is on TikTok. This guy is Nate B. Jones. Let me know if you can hear this, Keith.
Amazon laid off 30,000 people today. The narrative is that this is about AI replacing jobs. The
No.
reality is very
You
different.
can't hear it?
I mean, I can hear it through your mic, but that's it.
That's it, eh? Why isn't it playing through here?
Mm-mm.
That's so annoying.
Make sure when you
Screen.
hit share that at the bottom right corner, it
Also
says
share the tab
share audio.
audio. Yeah, it was on. Let's try again here.
And I want to be really precise about it because
Can you hear it or no?
it gets at corporate structure and finance
hear it
and
through your
not
mic.
really at AI in the way you think. So when people think AI layoffs, they think the robots are doing the jobs now, and therefore we are having layoffs. No. The people who
Oh,
are
now I
doing the
can hear
jobs are
both.
more stressed if they're still at Amazon.
Look at me.
But the AI automation story isn't actually hitting those jobs. What is hitting those jobs and is related to AI is the cost of chips. So NVIDIA sells chips to everyone, GPUs. Those chips are how we power AI. And none of the major cloud providers can get enough chips right now. Microsoft can't, Google can't. Google's in an easier spot. They have TPUs. And Amazon definitely can't. In fact, people don't know this, but AWS has a roughly 25% burning backlog on GPUs. In other words, they are missing out on revenue because companies are begging for more compute from.
That's crazy to hear, right? The fact that AWS is
Mm.
having to turn away business essentially. Could you imagine a world where Amazon would turn away dollars unless they actually had to? Like that was one of the craziest things through this whole conversation that I really perked up about, was like again, like obviously fact check all the sources, everything, but that's a pretty insane thing to hear out loud. So let's continue.
AWS that they can't fulfill because they can't buy GPUs because they only had so much budgeted to buy GPUs. And so, yes, the layoffs are related to AI, but in this case, it is burning corporate demand for GPU chips that is hitting the capital expenditure budget of Amazon so hard that they need to find other ways to reduce fixed costs so they can meet the expectations of Wall Street around the overall margins of the business. And you might.
I'm gonna try to jump in here, and Keith, you feel free to do the same to like add further context. But the major issue that we have with a lot of these companies is that it is so much perception in terms of what the numbers are saying, what they mean, and a lot of people are banking on things always going up and going up at a faster rate, which eventually reaches a point where it's fundamentally impossible to maintain and sustain. And AI is really just kind of exaggerating that reality because of so many things coming together at one time. And ultimately, you have to figure out some way to like maintain positive optics. Otherwise, it can have a major impact on the share price of a stock, which then in turn also has a massive impact on the company at large. And so it's really choosing between like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like you're screwed either way. And so a lot of this is having to make decisions to what they, I guess, is feel like it's maintaining more optics and hopefully getting to maintain and increase the share price. But then we'll also talk about the circular investing more after he continues. Anything else, Keith, that you wanted to add?
No, no.
Cool.
Be like, well, why does that matter? They're all like billion-dollar companies. In Amazon's case, their margins have always been notoriously thin everywhere except AWS. Retail is like a ridiculously thin business.
I keep pausing this because I want to make sure everyone has full context here. So AWS is Amazon Web Services. So Amazon, like a massive sector of their business, because what they were doing in terms of delivering your package in 2 days, like that was never the long-term vision. That was a very unsustainable, non-profitable business. So what they did for the longest time, you'll notice this, that their customer service was exceptional. Like 10 years ago, they went above and beyond because all they were trying to do was to get us hooked to a service where they could then build high profit businesses around that anchor of us being hooked to the consumer experience that we've known to come and either love or hate, but either way use a lot in terms of Amazon. And so they built this AWS, Amazon Web Services, to take advantage of the fact that this was a massive emerging market. And it's one of the highest profitable forms of their business. And it's very related to chips, AI, cloud computing in terms of how apps function. And we talked about it on a previous episode where when one small sector of AWS went down, a massive amount of the internet crashed as well. So there's so much riding on the success of AWS and these chips. So like the stakes are absurdly high. I just want to add that additional context.
But the AWS margins have been really good. And so the street, for better or worse, expects them to continue growing the high margin business at a good clip. The street was not happy with their 18% year over year growth rate this quarter. And the street is looking for them to pick that growth rate back up, which they cannot do if they cannot buy more chips. And they cannot buy more chips without destroying their margin unless they can cut costs other places. And chips are so expensive that the only way they can cut costs is by going after jobs or fixed costs or salaries. And that is what is happening. And so really, when you read this, instead of reading this as a guidebook to where AI is automating, read it as a guidebook to the things that Amazon finds least painful to cut when they have to trade talent for GPUs in order to maintain their margins. So these were very hard discussions, and the places they cut are places that I think they are strategically not as invested in. And that is the way I read it. None of this does anything to make people who got fired today feel better. And so I don't want to pretend it does. If you got let go from Amazon, that really sucks. And this doesn't fix it. And I hope you find a role soon. There is absolutely life after Amazon. I found life after Amazon. It does happen. There's a huge network of Amazon alumni out there, including me. And yeah, we look out for each other as best we can. But the narrative is something I do care about getting right, because I am tired of lazy narratives around AI, and I wanted to be very precise here. So that's what's really going on. And yeah, when you hear the easy AI automation story, kick the rocks a little bit and see what crawls out.
So that's really important to share here, right? Because everyone has kind of used AI as like their get out of jail free card, right? Where it's something that is such a main point of topic where when we can blame something that is like a character, which is what all of these people who are building this have basically created this perception publicly that this thing is more than software. Like this is just software that people are personifying to be the boogeyman to answer all of their problems and to get out of jail free in terms of any mistakes that they may have made as a business. It's not me, it's AI, right? And so I think where do you want to go from here, Keith?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the major takeaway from this story and this thought here is like, where does this incentive to go all in on AI really come from?
Mhm.
And he points out like the street, right? Wall Street is who's encouraging all of this investment. And so I wanted to dig deeper into like this concept of corporate governance today. and like what is it exactly, like how do corporations make decisions, who are they making decisions for, and how can sometimes these incentives around that get misaligned. So to start, I wanted to show this tweet because I saw this and I thought it was very relevant. Anastasia Zeke has said, investor says that we need AI, right? And so the CEO is like, yeah, that's right, we need AI. The product manager, he goes out and he builds AI. And the dev says, all right, I've created it. Like, here's the AI. And then the user says, but I don't want AI. And this is kind of just, one sector of what we're kind of seeing here, as far as like, yes, people are using AI, but it's definitely being little bit overdone and also overutilized in terms of just the term AI. Whereas it's like, okay, we've had machine learning for quite some time, and like the use cases of that have been here for quite some time. All the algorithms that we utilize on social media are in that sense a form of AI. But this concept of like put an AI on it is like a little bit less needed than what it is being offered at. So
Yes.
just wanted to
It's
kind of start
definitely
there.
a buzzword, right? Whenever these massive technological shifts take place, there's always buzzwords that people try to use to like increase the perception of the fact they're doing good things, to increase their share price, all that good stuff or bad stuff, depending how you view it. But AI, like I think one of the fundamental problems here, and I want you to continue on with your point, but like much like we talked about with blockchain and crypto, is that the end user in the vast majority of cases doesn't like they need to not know they're using AI if they really want to make it super successful. And the problem right now is that they haven't cracked the whole UI UX experience for how to use this in most practical ways. And I also think that AI people in general are dramatically exaggerating the technical aptitude of the mainstream public. Like, I think they think people are, because they're in their own little echo chamber, man, where they're like the smartest people on the planet when it comes to tech. And they think that like everybody around the world knows this stuff, or you could just upskill them quickly. I can say firsthand, as someone who runs like very basic consumer products, the average person can barely use a computer, bro. Bro, it's true, man. Like, unless you have a job where you are using this stuff every single day, like a lot of people, they really can't deal with complex software, and it's way too hard to use AI right now. And I don't see that changing dramatically super soon. Like, they have a lot of things to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed a comment from RD.
Yeah.
Um, she said, why aren't the companies trying to change the narrative? It's almost like they don't care. They are taking advantage of the poor marketing.
So I don't think they want to change the narrative at all, because the narrative is, like I said before, it's separated from them, right? It's like we can't control this AI entity. It's this character, right? It's not me, it's AI, right? Like that is the perfect narrative. So they don't, honestly, I don't think they would ever want to change it. And I think that it was either a perfect coincidence or accident, or it was the plan all along. Because how do you get away with doing all of this stuff without creating a public narrative when it seems like it's something separate from human decisions? Like that's what they convinced us all of, this reality that like, oh, we couldn't stop it, or like you can't slow it down. Like these are all just human beings creating software that's then creating these outcomes. So it's just human being decisions. But great question there. It took me a month to know more than 94% of humans, LOL, when it comes to computers. Yeah, a lot of people just they really don't like technology and they fight it a lot. And if you go a long enough period of time with where you weren't keeping up with the layer before, because it stacks and it compounds, right? Like as someone who's designed apps, I make decisions based on the decisions that were made before me, right? So if you missed that before, you are just so overwhelmed and it's so intimidating. And a staggering amount of people, even in office jobs, are there. Like I have friends that run like pretty decent office jobs and they make pretty good money. And I see how they use technology and I'm like, bro, there's no world where this stuff gets incorporated quickly, because it's not that user friendly. Like it's really, really not. Like a lot of these systems, I think they will crack that eventually, but I don't think that they can automate people as fast as they're trying to convince everyone they can. I think it's a convenient narrative.
Hmm. I honestly, I stand on the other side of that. I mean,
Okay, tell me.
obviously, I think that when it comes to the investment that's happening right now, yes, we're way out ahead of what impact and result we're actually going to get from this. Um, but I think that's what investment is. right? Like
Yes, it's
that's
projecting. Yeah,
what you're
true.
supposed to do. And so my big thing is, if we really look back 3 years ago to what ChatGPT was in the fall of 2022 to what it's capable of now, especially as they just released a lot of these new features and the level at which we're seeing things like Lovable or some of these other like platforms where you just like type to it and it gives you a real output of something that you could use in some way or another. I honestly believe that if we project out another 5 years from now, a $5 trillion market cap for Nvidia probably won't even it probably won't be enough. Um, and that's just 5 years. Like I really think that because here's the thing, we've all been trained to use Google is my thing, right?
But
So
that was over
you
a long period of
understand
time, dude.
facts, but what I'm saying is that nothing about that use, nothing about internet user behavior needs to change. Is my thing. So all I have to do now is just go to ChatGPT and I Google the same way that I used to before, or I go to Perplexity and I Google the same way that I used to before, and eventually, like we're going to be able to get so much more output from that same user action that we like. I honestly think that it'll be insane from
Mhm.
just that same type of action of I'm going to Google my problem and get the answer back, but now instead of it being just an answer, I'm going to have something created to respond to this problem that I have. And I genuinely think that that's probably 5 years away from like having that go out, place an order on Amazon and uh, do a return for me. And like next thing you know, I got a little pet robot who's gonna take it to the dang UPS store. um, I don't know. Yeah, I think the use cases won't be I think the adoption rather will happen really fast because we've already got the the user behavior that's needed to fix to make it work is how I look at it at least.
So I think that 5 years is probably a realistic time frame, but for how quickly shit is crumbling, is that I don't like, I think that's not fast enough to not lead to some pretty horrific outcomes. I would say. So I totally hear what you're saying, and I do think that it'll eventually get to an experience where it's mostly agentic, meaning the AI is performing the actual tasks for you. But we're also assuming a lot of dangerous things here. Like, right, we're assuming the same rate of progress, right? And so we're also assuming there won't be hurdles, hiccups, all these things that we've talked about so many times in terms of the building the actual infrastructure. The legal thing, I
Yeah.
think, is massive. Like, if anybody was truly aware of how many laws are being broken here, like that could really
Yeah.
slow some stuff down here. Like, all of these people are, or again, I don't want to say all these people, but like a lot of companies out here are training models on stuff that is not theirs, right? So it's definitely a concerning thing. I've got some notes. What's up?
No, I'm just that point there. I mean, it's pure robbery. I don't think like the problem that I think exists is that there's no way to stop this. I actually worked on a project a few years ago, and it was this really cool concept. It was called automation, and it was this concept of creating an internet of rules. And this actually was a guy in Canada who was working on this, and the idea being like it's really hard to actually prevent from a physical, if you may, or technical standpoint, uh, the copying of someone else's intellectual property.
Hmm.
Um, Blockchain in a way can fix it, but the problem, and this is what I thought was so cool about this project, is that that actually has to happen at the internet layer. It can't happen on the blockchain layer because the blockchain is an extension of the fact that we have the cables and all of the physical internet infrastructure that already exists. In order for you to connect to your blockchain, you got to have AT&T. You know what I mean? So, um, so we'd have to have a rules based system that exists at that layer,
Hmm.
and so until we have that, I think the intellectual property issues that come with this, I don't think we're going to have anything. I mean, think about torrenting. Like it still goes on. You can't stop that from happening. And if the stuff that we're trying to get is valuable enough, then it'll just be done. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I think that they'll be able to push through it. And we also saw the OpenAI whistleblower guy try to come out and whistleblow, and that did not work out too well for him. So yeah, there's definitely I think it'll still happen regardless. I'm just saying that theoretically it could slow down. One thing we got a thing from here from Big where it says AI will not be the reason for this huge economic downturn. Many people are about to be extremely confused. What do you mean by that? So AI is the only way to get us over this hurdle. So how I read that is that you're saying that a lot of decisions of kicking the can down the line have come to a point where really the only way out is AI, or at least that's what will be sold to us. There will be a point when all data is collected and humans will organize the data based on falsehoods, and that will be the factors that the AI is trained on. That was actually giving my next point that I wrote down here is that we're assuming that this stuff can keep getting better, but it's going to run out of human generated content to learn from. So essentially, it's going to be learning from itself. And is that a good or a bad thing? Right? I think we're already close to that point where it's learning on other AI created content, which then can create even further hallucinations and all of this stuff. And it still consistently makes shit up all the time. Like I still find that it's making stuff up very consistently. It's smarter than we think. It's smarter than we think. It's plotting and waiting. Cause manipulative humans trained it. Yeah, that's the concern that you're going with. Go ahead, Keith.
I like it. I like it because the idea here is that if we're creating artificial intelligence and it mirrors humanity, then it would absolutely be self-interested. And it would be very clever about those self-interests in the way
It
that
wouldn't tell you.
yeah, it wouldn't tell you.
Yeah, Mo Gaudat is one of the best people on this, where he really blew up because he used to be part of Google, and he was part of their like moonshots divisions where they would go and take these big leaps of growth. And one of them was in AI. And so he was very instrumental in the development of early stages of AI. And he actually came out years ago. He made a book called Scary Smart, I think it was. And he basically echoed your exact point, Keith, where he's like, if this is a reflection of us, the only chance that we have is to be better. Right? Which
Yeah.
is like, that's a terrifying thought because if you've been on the internet lately, like that ain't happening.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yeah, that's a very, very interesting thought there for sure, man. Um, we're I definitely have a very pessimistic view of all this stuff. If I'm being honest, I think that like it's always nice to hear the people that say that, oh, don't worry, like it'll be fine. It's nice to hear that some people think that, because I don't feel that way. And I definitely like wonder if, and we'll get back maybe a little bit more on topic after this, but like, do we do we really have a future as a human race? Because in reality, like there's always going to be a moment in the life cycle of any organic
Species.
being where it dies. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it does die at some point. Um, Nothing lives forever, us as individuals, and probably not as a species. And would it really be all that crazy to think that as we already have so much violence in our world, like if we create the ultimate machine that can be better at that than us, be better at humanity than humans themselves, like would that not potentially accelerate our demise, you know? And maybe not in our
No, that's
lifetime or whatever, but
I don't know. I think things will speed up very quickly. And I also think that I don't think I'm hard pressed to believe that it would end us as a species because I don't see how that would think it's advantageous unless it's because we're a waste of resources. But I do think that if we're its creator, like look at like people who are very religious, right? They worship the creator, right? And so regardless, you'd think there'd be some of that that would come into it, and hopefully it wouldn't kill us. But like that's definitely where I go. And
that's
it's also important.
interesting.
There's some important things to consider here too, where Kevin said, "Are you referring to super intelligent AI?" Because that's also the point, right? There's different terms that are along with this. There's like AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. There's uh, SAI, it's like ASI, artificial super intelligence. And I recommend going to look up what these definitions actually mean so that you can know because they're not meaning the same sort of thing. Philosophical AI. Is that a definition or are you philosophical AI? But I've thought
We
about
should
this
do
a
an
lot,
episode
Keith,
on that.
because because of my client, right? Who I have to listen to this stuff every single week. And so I hear the people who are coming on who are incredibly positive and but they're all so far removed from the vast majority of people's experiences. Right? Like it's already getting progressively so hard out there and unfairly so. And I do think that in a best case scenario, this can solve a lot of our problems because it's hard for people to conceptualize a world where like you really don't need a job anymore. I worry about how we transcend that, right? Like from kids, it's always like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right. And so when we live in a world where there are no jobs, like we're going to have to start preparing to change how we define a lot of these things. I don't think that's inherently bad per se, but I also think that like we could be living, and maybe we already are living in like a dystopian reality that's presented in a way that's utopia. Right? Like, as is right now, we walk around and we act like every power structure doesn't screw us over, but they do. And we all just say like, "Oh, well, it is the way that it is. That's how it goes." Like, I think that even if it goes the best case scenario, I just think it probably makes that more dramatic, but we're more numb to the point where you can't specifically tell.
I like rising complexities statement, and then I wanted to go back to
Yeah.
the idea of job. Will there be jobs, or what will the job market look like a little bit too? Um, yeah. So rising complexity. What about the possibility of binding with AI internally and externally? So I mean, this is what I think. Like, if the AI were benevolent, and they were like, well, there's some use to you. We'll have some use to you. We'll just merge with you, and then make it work. I think that's a possibility. I forgot where I was. I was listening to something that made me feel like that was a real legitimate path. But what I
It,
fear from that is that it would still be the end of. It would be the end of,
humans,
yeah, like
as we know
regular
it.
humans. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and is there something more nefarious about that? Like, is this a very long plan that was done to strip us from human abilities that we don't have or that we think we don't have because they've been lying dormant for too long? Like, if you go into a lot of the woo-woo stuff, the conspiracy theories, like a lot of people believe that like we are in a dystopian reality right now, and that we are simply what is the word that the guy who Bob Lazar was one of the first whistleblower, and he basically said, I remember it now. He said that he read in a confidential filing that we human beings are just containers. That's how we're seen, and so it's like, is there some sort of deeper reasoning to that? Like, there's so many interweaving things here that connect to where we go as a species, and I think that people are going to try to do this at the very least. And I think you'll probably get an option in the not too distant future to decide, like, do you want to upload your consciousness? Like, I don't think that's like 5 years away. That's probably like 10 to 20. But like, I think that will probably happen in our lifetime, which is incredibly crazy to think about. Ray Kurzweil, a guy I've mentioned on the show numerous times, he's a futurist. And he's basically described a lot of these scenarios in his book, The Singularity is Nearer. I recommend going to pick that up if you're curious
Mm.
about this stuff. He talks about all of this. And he I think the scariest part is like how consistent he's been with these predictions, and they haven't changed all that much given how long of a time horizon it was. Like a lot of this stuff when he was saying it in the 80s and 90s, people looked at him like he was the craziest person on the planet. Like this guy should be like institutionalized. But a lot of the predictions have turned out to be fairly accurate. And when you think about that, right? If we integrate with, I think the offer will be too good for people, Keith, to not integrate with it.
Right. I mean,
Because think about it.
it's already, yeah, like Neuralink, like Bobby Gooden said, like you would need it. You'd have to have it.
We've seen this on a smaller scale, right? Because like this is actually a perfect case study for this. Social media and the internet gave you access to everything that you need to make whatever life that you want for free. And what did 99% of people do with it? They destroyed their own life. People will always take the path of least resistance, even though it leads to the most amount of pain, right? And so if you can go to these people and basically be like, hey, you don't need to actually do the work to learn anything. You'll instantly know everything. I think you're going to be really hard pressed for the majority of people to say no to that. And if enough people say yes, you're basically forced to say yes. We talked about this
That's
before.
right.
Like my grandpa fought getting a smartphone for as long as he possibly could, right? And then eventually they stopped selling the smartphone, and then he had to get stop selling the flip phone. They've since come back and all that stuff, but you're basically forced to do it eventually if enough people do it. And I just think that the offering will be too insane for people to say no.
Yeah, man. I talked about it in one of my videos where I was talking about accelerationism or whatever, and it was just like, I was like, I'm not doing the Neuralink thing though. But it's like at some point you will have to face that scenario. Yeah. I mean, hopefully not in our lifetime.
I think it is gonna be in our lifetime, dude. I really do. Naval says basically not having it would be very costly. Yeah. And then
Exactly. Yeah.
it also comes down to like the system at large, right? Where how we view what's costly. Like I'm hopeful that we can actually get to a place where if people don't have to work, that they put their time towards exploration of other things that are more naturally human, right? Like I think about this all the time too, but we actually know nothing about ourselves. Like we know nothing because the only things that we know for the most part, they got through a filtration system of what you were allowed to watch. Later, Akin, hope you're great, man.
Yes, sir. Talk
Um,
soon, man.
and then like we only got to know what we were allowed to know. And you think about this too. So many times throughout history where there was a lot of information or knowledge in one place, it would get burned all the time. Right? Like let's say someone got overtaken and then they would burn all the books. And you think about how quickly we forget and how quickly it is to I want to do a video about how the schooling system became what it was, how big pharma became what it was, all that stuff. Optional, not mandatory to function in society. Yeah, I think that's what it will start at, right? Like most things did, like using the internet did, like using a phone did, that they were optional and they still technically are optional. But I lived with a flip phone for like a month, a year or two ago to see, and we've become so reliant on technology, man. Like navigating without GPS was like crazy difficult. I was in a place that I'm not from, so that definitely didn't help things. But we are very already reliant on the tech that we have now. Imagine when it's 10 times better and does everything. Did you see that AI robot, Keith, that they
Um,
announced?
no, I don't think so. And Bigfoot Stepper said before, he said humans are already bonded with AI. They feel emotion about their cars and phones. And yeah, I've definitely always thought about this too. It's like, well, once you had the smartphone, bro, like what really is the difference between that and Neuralink? Like,
It's a
like
body part.
it's right here. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's already attached to us. We're already cyborgs. It's just a matter of like how much closer to, I guess, your brain does the technology actually get?
There, yeah, there's a lot of there's one girl who talks about this stuff a lot. I see her clips pop up on TikTok. I can't remember her name, and she's definitely like very fringe conspiracy stuff, but she does have a fair amount of maybe I'll bring her to a future episode in terms of like one of her videos or whatever, but she talks about that exactly. Where like she doesn't even say it metaphorically. She says like this is a body part. And she
mm,
basically said that a lot of our bodies and the things going on within us, they're much like Tesla said, it's energy and frequency and vibration at work, right? And if you think about how this thing functions, it's a lot of those same principles. So it's crazy, man. The robot that came out, I also want to provide this distinction is that I'll show you. This is the story of I'll show you the video quickly. It was by this company called uh, A1, I think, or whatever. But I'll show you this, and you've probably seen it, Keith, at least on Twitter. But I also want to show you that it can't do most of what it's saying that it could. Let's see. So have you seen this, Keith?
it's pulling up now. I saw, yeah, I saw something about it.
So these things, like this is also what they do, right? Like if you watch this commercial, you're thinking this thing's good to go. You buy it, it's gonna come in and do your chores. It can't do like almost any of the shit that it says it can do within this video. There's a different commercial. This is not related. Free advertising for y'all. But like, see, it shows like it's doing some amazing stuff, like doing your laundry and all this stuff. But a lot of these actions are performed by somebody wearing a VR headset. So where it is right now, for it to do almost anything of actual practical utility, it would be some person in like say a different country coming into your house with a VR headset to a robot. Like that's crazy. That's
Wait,
like
wait, wait, wait. So you're saying wait.
yes.
It would be remotely used by someone who's using a VR headset? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, almost
Whoa.
all of its use cases. You see, brother, but there, I'll get it to come back. I don't have YouTube Premium on this account apparently. But if you see Buddy in the back, look, he's controlling it
Oh,
with
wow.
VR. So like they make it sound like this is going to be some groundbreaking technology that you can buy. It's still farther away than they're making it look, but Yeah, could you imagine that? Like, having some random person in a different country use your robot? Like, that sounds like a horror movie.
That's crazy.
Absurd. This guy's been on my client's podcast before, so I knew about this company, I knew what they were building, and I will say that the marketing is a little bit deceptive because it does make it seem like this is gonna be some groundbreaking thing, and I don't think once it gets to a point where it can be self-sufficient, that it's as long as it's built properly, that's a bad thing because there's a lot of older people that need care and they can't afford it, and right? So, like, this is a fairly affordable thing when it works, but right now it's pretty useless. All these pioneers of robotics won't last. Individuals will watch the fail and cut the losses. Watch them fail, I think, like, and move on from them. I think most of these companies will not survive, but I think the one that does crack it, Elon is gonna have the number one robot. Yeah, you gotta think that he is. He's invested a lot of money into this. Their robot seems like it's probably the most likely to be successful. They also have the most money behind it, and it's a really tough thing to crack hardware. Like, why we're hearing about AI going so crazy more so than robotics is because this shit's a lot harder. Like, there's a lot of variables at play here. Like, we do so many things without thinking about it that are actually incredibly complex. So to try to transfer that in a smooth capacity is incredibly difficult to do, and that's why robots like this is a big thing. So, where do you
Naval,
wanna go from here? Did
I
you
just
watch this
wanted
one?
to address that because I don't know what he's. I didn't see it.
No, I didn't see the I'm not sure if I saw the one you're referring to. I did see one where actually producer Kurt sent us the clip. We should try to pull that up. But he said some crazy stuff in a recent interview, and that maybe it's not that crazy. I don't know, but basically he said for the earnings thing, I'll start there. I've heard him come out publicly and basically say that the circular investing thing is something that they're going to be doing even more of because he feels like that they have to basically do any means necessary to continue growth. But then in a different conversation, he talked about the example of, yeah, AI is going to take most jobs, but are they jobs that people actually want to be doing, or are they only doing them because they have to support themselves? And if we
Hmm.
figure out the whole supporting yourself piece, is this better for humanity? And again, if it's a good person building it, it would be, but you're banking on them being a good person. I think that's scarier than we think. And so you're also solely reliant on other people that we have no control over. So it's tough because he also used the example of like new jobs will be created too in the short term. Like look at I think the reference that he made or someone else made was that lamplighters don't exist anymore. Like back in the day, there used to be a job where literally people would go around and light the lamps on the street. Like that was literally a job, right? There's
Right.
so many things that we forget that at one time they thought that job would never go away, and then technology is undefeated; it comes and takes them.
Yeah, definitely. And we could transition into thinking about like how that has happened over history. It's like, is AI really going to take all the jobs, or will it just create these new ones? My personal belief is that yeah, it is creating these new ones, but these new jobs are like highly specified jobs that if you don't know what's going on, then you're not eligible for those
You can't do
jobs or qualified.
it. Yeah.
Um, but what I've seen from the little bit of research that I've done around this is that that's how it starts,
Yes.
and then eventually you get to the place to where it's like, okay, now there's like jobs for
New
normal
a
people
new
as well.
economy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now, you either need very specified knowledge or you need to be incredibly smart. Like, most people are so far behind, they couldn't be upskilled fast enough to deal with this. Like, I think Andrew Yang basically tried to sound the alarm that we need to start teaching truckers new skills and whatnot. I'm like, I think that'd be so difficult to achieve, right? Like a lot of these are going to be by people who already have knowledge that they're foundationally building upon, which gives them a massive advantage. But there's a message here that leads back to our core point of this episode from Underdog, where it says these companies in the US that now have virtual cashiers on the screen, it's cheaper to pay somebody from another country, right? So that's a massive thing that I think is really where a lot of these job cuts are coming from. It's a byproduct of your ability to offshore. What's up, Keith? Looks like you got a thought.
I'm just like, what? That's a thing?
Yeah, I've not seen that, but I've seen the automated like, um, we're not ready for super intelligence. Uh,
Yeah,
one thing I was
saying
gonna
that's
say
an
was that,
idea.
yeah, definitely. But so automation's been a thing that's been going on for a long time. Like, look, self checkouts are a big thing, and self checkouts are also crazy. One of my favorite not economists, marketers, Rory Sutherland, I think is his name. He basically said that yeah, net maybe it's a good as to start with for these say grocery stores to have these self-checkouts, but eventually you can't do a big grocery haul when you're doing it all yourself. It's just like too much to handle. And so then he thinks that in the long term, a lot of these people who are automating everything will eventually come to regret it and see the other benefits that jobs were having that you couldn't directly look at the bottom line and attribute it to it. But for jobs, let's get back to like the core thesis of job loss. So the first thing we talked about was why. You got a point?
I wanted to test a thought. I wanted to
Go for
test
it.
a thought with everyone here. So I had this thought the other day when we were listening to Jerome Powell talk about, the job market and how it's doing so poorly. And then we have this other video that we just watched from this TikTok guy saying that, well, really what's happening is these companies are just taking their money and they're investing it into AI and not into people. So my thought that I kind of gathered from this was like, could what the Fed's doing by lowering interest rates in an attempt to try to save the job market, could that potentially accelerate the problem by
Yeah,
then allowing it to be easier for companies to get cheaper money to go out and invest in AI instead of in people? And I
totally.
just wanted to test that thought out with people, see if that makes
Completely,
any
right? Because when you
sense.
think about who really benefits from these lower rates, it's not like you and me very much, right?
No.
Like it's people who are gonna be hiring and if you like you said, if they're hiring to build chips and to build facilities, like that doesn't really help too many people unless they have specialized information and skills. But why chips are so expensive, I had that written down here for the job connection, is that there's not many people in the world that can make these chips that are needed to do this, which is a massive problem. And they have a lot of IP, intellectual property attached to it. And they're one of the only few places in the world where they can be built. So they can basically make whatever price they want. And so that's why they're so damn expensive. And that's why they're banking so much on this. And for people who are the most impacted by this, I think about young people and they got like extremely screwed by all of this because what I'm seeing in terms of the offshoring jobs, I think that's really where a lot of this is going, is that they're starting to offshore jobs because where AI is right now, it can't do all the jobs. But if you give a competent foreign worker AI, it is significantly better than an entry level employee natively, in your home country. That's like I've lived it. I've hired someone here locally who was a junior employee, and then I hired someone overseas who had like the AI tools, and this guy was way better and cheaper, right? And so you think that like I'm a tiny business, and you don't think that some massive businesses are going to look at this and be like, oh my god, this is the clear and obvious way to go, because you can get someone who is very experienced, because before they couldn't really help you because the language thing was more of a problem, like we talked about, right? This solves a lot of that issue for the communication thing. And also when people are doing this, because they can communicate better and in real time see how they should be communicating, they also learn English and everything faster because there's so many data points to make connections on. And so then when they already have the industry specific knowledge and they're using it every single day, you're already tapping into things they have deep neural connections with. And then now you're connecting it with the appropriate language. They're going to learn English as fast as someone like here eventually, right? So it's I really do feel for people looking for their first job, especially in the fields where almost everyone went to school for. I was screaming as loud as I possibly could for the last like, even when I was in school, I was telling everyone who would listen to me, don't go to school. And I know that's like super hypocritical, but I was already deep into it and I was like trying to make my dad happy. So I got my degree. But everyone who was there, I was like, this is so dumb. This is not going to work. Like these jobs are going to be automated, and people are still putting so much money into this, racking up debt. And it's crazy that school debt is the only one where you can't, what's the proper term? Like you can't get rid of it, right? Like even if you go bankrupt, you still have your school debt, right?
Something I have no idea how that stuff works. I'm not gonna lie. I think that's right. I think what you're saying is right. Um, yeah, I don't know, but I also know that like there's something around how like it doesn't have to be paid back to some degree. Like,
They put pauses on it before. I think those have all since come to an end at this point.
but I'm saying like, for instance, like there's no penalty for not paying it.
Mm.
Essentially, you know what I mean? Like it might accrue and accrue and accrue, but like it doesn't show up in your credit report or something. Like I don't know. Actually, I actually don't know. So
Yeah,
there's something about it to where it's like you actually have no reason to pay it back, but I don't
totally.
know what it is.
Yeah, so we got some more notes here, and then I want you to take over, Keith, and go with whatever points you have. But Bigfoot Stepper says, it's the Bigfoot guy. If you can code and do AI, nobody can be in your way. There's crazy things that you can achieve right now. If I had more, and I'm slowly developing my own ability to, and I want to do more of this, my ability to code, because with my marketing skills, if I could also code, there's nothing I couldn't do in terms of building a business. My only limitation right now is that I have to pay engineers, and they come with the sides of having a person, right? They're sometimes unreliable. They don't do what they say they were going to do. They've got other clients, or like they've got their life if they're an employee of mine, right? So I definitely agree with that. If you could learn how to do that, it's going to be incredibly helpful. And then Naval said, creativity can't be replicated. That's facts. Not yet, but we'll see, right?
I do think that that's one place where there'll be a moat. I mean, well, when you listen to music, though, for instance, like there's a lot of really good AI music, to be fair. Now it has to have something to base its input from, right? Like it has to get sources of what's good art from. But if it has enough examples of that, then it can output it. So I like to think that, creativity is something that will be safe. Um, and when I say that, I think it's like, communication with people in some sort of a way that could be safe to some degree. But I wanted to ask you, Ben, what do you think about like for people who are trying to upskill, or you're saying just don't go to college at all? There's a lot of kids, like, let's be real, our generation and anyone a little bit younger, like we're going to be the ones who raise kids to where we don't care as much, right? But I think right now, like most kids are going to end up going to school when they shouldn't. Like it's just still a huge part of society.
And
What would you point kids towards if they were forced to go to school?
yeah, I actually can answer this. And not only are you right on that, I think they're gonna go do more schooling when they don't get a job. That's
Yep.
what they do, man. When they
Yep.
can't get a job, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get a doctorate, or I'm gonna go get my master's degree." And I'm like, "Don't do more stupid shit. Like, stop." But that's what people do. They become career students and they think they're pursuing something bigger. It's just like, no, you weren't that good at your job probably, or the market wasn't there, right? I think a lot of people, it's so funny. Like now, when I look at someone who has a bunch of degrees, of course, there's nuance to this. But if there's someone in business and they have like a bunch of business degrees, I'm like, that person's just a shitty business person. Like that person's just not a good operator, because you would go in and make money. You wouldn't need like everything is now just in time information, right? Like there's no such thing really now that of like a need for just in case, because much like you used to need to know mathematics to get through the world because you didn't have a calculator in your pocket all the time, you now do. And so that the calculator analogy has spilled over into most areas of life, and it will only continue to do so. So I think that the academic stuff is crazy. In terms of what I would say, well, I gave my sister this exact advice. So I'll say that to anyone listening, this is exactly what I would do. I would go be at the school. I would live in a student town, but I would try to build a business over those 4 years. So I would take it as seriously as school, if not more so. I'd go to the library every day and I would try and fail at businesses and different skills. And you would end up so much farther ahead, because most people, what do they always say? They're like, oh, I go to school for the social element. Okay, you still can, and you don't have to pay for the classes. Like they still let you on campus. Like,
That's true. I used to
right? They're
sneak
not
into
gonna
all kinds of classes. I used to just go to
exactly.
classes. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
just listen and learn.
That's the craziest part. Like people who say that university isn't a scam, if it's actually like the transfer of information, I understand the true utility is like the safety and security that it gives to an employer if they know you have this, right? But if we're talking about inputs and outputs, you can go sit in on lectures for free and get the exact information. You just won't get graded on it, and so then you don't pay for it.
That's the truth.
University is
Now, if
crazy, bro.
everybody does that, it might not work. But
It becomes a
but
problem,
man,
of course. But enough
no,
people
but for
fall in
real,
line.
like I
Yes.
loved that. I was like, wait a minute. Like one day it just hit me my freshman year. I was like, wait a minute. Like there's lectures going on right now about stuff that I want to know about.
Yeah.
And I've got this free period where I could just go and sit in on this class. And I'm like, but anyone could just come in and sit on this class because there's 150 people in here and like the teacher's not gonna know. But
100%. Yes. And
it's a crazy
Artie
thing to think about.
said, more people will go to trade schools. Yeah, I think that will give you a little bit longer of a runway in terms of having a job, but these robots will get better pretty quickly. So that's one thing to consider. And then Big had another one here that I like a lot. I want to double down on this because I think it connects to the point that I was trying to make. Some young boy asked Mozart, "How did you create symphonies when you were a child?" Mozart said, "You're too young." The boy replied, "Why you did it?" And He said, yes, but I wasn't asking anyone for advice. That's one of the fundamental problems here, right? Is that like we have been trained to ask for what's next or to ask for advice,
Mhm.
right? And this is the first time in our livelihoods where that is the worst possible trait that you could have right now. It's been that way for like 10 or so years since the evolution of the internet. And I've been screaming at this at anyone who will listen, and they all called me psycho. They all called me, but they all called me a lot of things, right? And I was like, bro, everything you need for all the things you're saying you want, that you're saying is at the end of the degree, you can go build yourself right now if you take the information seriously. And truthfully, if you, because people would always say, oh, I can't get this job without the degree. And if you're a lawyer, doctor, whatever, okay, I can understand that. But in almost every other kind of job, if you were to go just do the work for free for yourself, you would build up a portfolio that would make you impossible to ignore.
Mhm.
Like truly impossible. If you did what I said and you went and lived on a campus and you built business after business, acquiring skills for 4 years, you're going to fail on almost all of them. But by the time that you came out of school or fake school, you would be so valuable.
Mhm.
Like I lived this. I did it firsthand. I just was dumb and I didn't drop out of school. I was just doing my own stuff while in school. So I was doing this. I lived it, but I could have done even better had I not been paying for school, because when I came out, I had school debt, right? And so I would have loved to have, because I can say this honestly, and then I want you to take over again, Keith. But I work in marketing, right? And so everyone looks at me and they're like, see, like the schooling system still works. Like you're doing your degree. Ironically, it showed me how flawed the schooling system is because I did the complete opposite of basically everything I was taught. Like I cannot stress how useless
Yeah.
every course was that I took. And I paid like 1,000 Canadian per course.
Yep. Yep. I mean, it's funny too, because like someone could point at me and almost say the same thing. Like, I went to school for communications and like advertising was my major. So
You're
like
doing it, man.
you could say that like I technically am doing it, but to be clear, I was doing it well before I got to university. You know what I mean?
You
Like,
have to. Yeah.
so it wasn't like my university experience is shaped my career. It was more like I was like, oh, I should probably like double down on these things that I'm already doing and see what this university has to offer. And to be honest, like, look, my degree in particular was probably the worst that I could have done. Like maybe if I did like journalism or even like broadcast or learn something about like film or something, that would have been better. But I already knew the advertising industry in and out. And not
Yes.
only that, but the way that it's shaped today. You know what I mean? Like you can't teach me about TV ads and uh in radio and like expect that that's going to help me in today's world. Like so I had to, they were teaching like CPMs and I'm like, bro, like I knew what a CPM was when I was 15. Like you're not
Yeah.
teaching me anything here.
No, and you
But
learn.
stuff like that.
Sorry, you got more points?
No.
You learn from doing so much more every single time. And like it's so crazy because like I said before, I've talked about this in previous episodes. I was in the freaking marketing program and they didn't want me posting on social media, bro. They literally were like, I had to create an alias for myself to not
Wow.
get in trouble from my academic advisor for posting on social media.
That's crazy.
So, but like everyone around me, when they found out that I was the kid creating content, they were like, oh my God, like I can't believe he's doing that. They were all idiots. Like, if you were paying attention, it was so obvious that all the shit we were learning was useless. That's why I doubled down on social media. I was like, this shit is happening, whether you like it or not. And the people who are the beacons of truth are full of shit. And so that's why I was like, I don't care about school whatsoever. I literally did the least possible work a human being could possibly do and graduate. I didn't even go to the ceremony. Like it was such bullshit. But I wrote down this quote while you were talking. And I think this is really puts a bow on the point we were trying to make. So obedience is is valuable in a time of certainty. It's a death sentence in a time of rapid change.
Mm.
And I think, unfortunately, we have a ton of people who have been trained to be obedient. And I can say that most of my like hardships throughout my academic career has been because I wasn't very obedient, right? Like I would ask questions and I would do all the things that they said were my flaws. That's like the most ironic thing that I think about all of this is how all of my teachers, the shit that they said was why I wouldn't be successful is exactly why I am. That's a fundamental problem.
Love it, man. And Yeah, there's no clear path forward right now. Like everyone, even the businesses, are just like scrambling, throwing money at stuff, trying to see what to do.
Totally. They don't know what they're doing either, bro.
So it's like, you know, you might be one of those experiments, you might not. So it's like you might as well start experimenting yourself and seeing what you can build out of it. And I actually have my quote. Uh, I don't know if that was your quote of the day, but I have my quote of the day, and it actually very well stems off of this entire conversation. And it's this idea here that I found on Twitter. It's that if you're lost, then education is the answer. Like, seek more knowledge. If you're educated, then the answer is that you need to start to execute. And then if you're executing, then the only thing that's stopping you right now is going to be the consistency of it. Just be more consistent and you'll get to where you want to go. So just kind of wanted to pull this up because we got a lot of people that are educated and that are stuck in the loop of thinking that they're lost and then getting more educated. And then they get stuck in this loop of, but I'm lost and I don't know what to do, and seeking more education. And a lot of the times it's like, you might just need to do something and see what you can get out of it and do it consistently enough to actually, continue to see results. So anyways, just wanted to kind of
Yeah.
throw my quote
No,
of the day
that's
in
I
there.
love that, and the visual makes it very easy to conceptualize. I think I made a video about this the other day on one of my apps pages, and I said that not enough people understand or practice the concept of a minimum viable action. What is the
Mhm.
smallest thing that I can do right now to create progress and to make this thing real? Because when you realize every successful person just basically did that nonstop. Because the second you do the one small thing, there's a next obvious small thing. And if you don't know the answer to that, literally go into ChatGPT and ask, what's the smallest thing I could do right now to make this thing real? It's going to give you the answers that I typically give to people, and they don't listen to me because I'm their friend. Right now, it's like you can just go do this and learn this stuff. So, minimum viable action is huge. Keith,
Love that.
Kevin sent this post right here. I'd love to hear your thoughts because I can't share your common experience. I'm a white dude.
He said,
In terms of, go ahead.
I was just gonna read it out.
So,
He said, as a black
you,
man, I can build
yeah,
the entire company, amazing skill set, but still not be trusted by the executives, so the door is not open to you. So when I try to build my own, I can't get a loan. Okay. So what were you saying though, Ben? I'll respond.
yeah. So I've always been so curious, right? Because I'm a white dude, and this is like it's not as bad in Canada, but I know in America there's still some serious like race-based stuff, right? How how prevalent is that within the workforce of from what you can see? I know it's so anecdotally, but like is that still a major issue that would hold you back?
Yes. Um,
Okay.
and one of the things about it, though, that I think is worth pointing out is that as human beings, we're always going to look out
For our
for
own.
our own,
Yeah,
right? For people who look like us.
true.
So, as much as it is racism to some degree in certain parts of the United States, that's a very big thing. It's also human
Nature.
behavior, you know.
Yeah.
Um, now, um, that doesn't excuse the stuff that does occur, and there are also systemic things, right, that have been in place that have the biggest thing that I think is the issue, and this is why I'm so passionate about doing what I do, is that also we don't have access to the information, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the big thing about what has happened with a lot of Black America is that we don't know about how to do certain things that would put us in the position to be more qualified than someone else, or how to get access to funding was something that someone brought up in here as well. I can't just walk into a bank and get a loan. And it's like, really, right now, for instance, at a bank, like banks aren't giving a lot of loans to any businesses unless
Yeah.
they meet certain requirements.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I learned working at a broker dealer with a black man, very successful, one of the only black owners of a broker dealer in the United States, was that like people need to look at other forms of funding. Okay, bank loans and venture capital are not the only two ways to get funding. And so, for instance, and I'll just drop some stuff like the SBA loans, the SBA loan programs. I know a guy right now, young kid, our age, who's going out and buying up businesses using SBA loans from people who, for instance, there's this big wealth transfer that's happening, and shout out to my pops for continuing to tell me about this, where a lot of old people who have analog businesses, think about like a, trying not to give his model away, think about like a mower, a lawnmower, okay, who's not utilizing any technology in their business, but rather runs a $5 million a year business. That guy's 70, 80 years old. He's about to pass, and his son does not want to run that business. So what people are out here doing now is they're going out and they're buying these businesses from people using loans, crazy amounts of leverage on this. Because why? Because it's a $5 million a year cash flowing business. So I don't have to, um, I don't need venture capital funding where you take up 20% of the company. No, this is a loan that's backed by real revenues in the company. And that kind of financing is not something that you're not taught that in school. You're not taught that online. And the only way that you really know about these types of ways to go out and get financing to go and acquire companies like that is through knowing someone who's done it,
Very true.
or the person at the bank that's offering these kinds of loans. So the real issue in America is the lack of access to information, and with that, the examples of people that are doing this stuff. Because if I don't see you doing it, that's a pretty crazy endeavor for me to go out and say, "Oh, I'm going to go buy a business. I'm going to go buy a $5 million business, put 10% down on that, get a loan from my local bank and with an SBA loan, and grow this company by 20% year over year because I know technology enough to do that, and then I'll sell it at a 5 times the revenue in a couple years." Huh?
Yeah, it doesn't sound real, but it is.
It is. And then Kevin also brought up CDFIs. Um,
What's that?
wow, I'm blanking out on the actual. It's like a community development financial institution.
Okay.
Um, Also, ways to get qualified access uh, to loans and stuff from institutions that are built in order to allow you to do that without having some huge business. Um,
But that's
that is the key. Who
the
do you
the
know?
point that you made, Keith, is super important. I actually have firsthand experience with this too, is that my dad, much like you said, he runs a service-based business. It's not a sexy business. He builds pools, right? Makes very good money every single year for himself. And he's been trying to sell his business for a very long time. There's like nobody who's young who wants to do the business. And so it's sitting there. He wants to retire. He can't find someone to buy it. And so if that's happening to him, I can only imagine how many more there are out there. A lot of opportunity hides in the boring stuff.
It's trillions of dollars worth of businesses. There was a CNBC video that came out a couple years ago of like, who are the wealthiest people in America that you've never heard of? And it's like it was some crazy staggering amount of like, I'm just gonna throw a number out. Like, imagine 70% of all of the people who have a net worth of over $100 million, they're all based off of having some sort of like service-based business that they've either,
Mhm.
grown through roll-ups, meaning they acquired other smaller versions of it and made it one big company, or that they grew from scratch, building out tons of different franchises of these types of service-based businesses. So yes, that is where a lot of the wealth already is and where it's about to change hands. And so um back to that comment, Kevin, you said that is the key. Who do you know that has the resources to allow funding at any level? 100%. And like, it's like we don't know these people and we don't even know that a lot of this stuff exists, right?
Yes.
So it's both of those things that create the massive issues that you have in America around why is it that minorities in general uh, feel like they can't move the way that the rest of society is moving, if I may.
Yeah, totally. And the point that you made about people take care of their own, like if you look at a lot of these bureaucracy, like a lot of the jobs, they are a lot of them are had by white people, right? Too. So like their own circle is predominantly going to be their own race, right? So even the stuff they talk about it, a lot of this stuff is like there's not a good database or directory where you can go and get these questions answered or find this information. Like a lot of it is very difficult. Like you said, you got to actually find someone who knows this and be told firsthand. And that's crazy that in the age of the internet, that's the reality. Like that's a fundamental failing on their part. One thing I wanted to attach here. So Bigfoot Stepper says, wrong one. Sorry. He or she said, you got to know how to grow a business 20% to LOL. Yes. And growing a business from scratch is very hard, but that is incredibly different from what Keith's discussing.
Exactly.
So like,
Exactly.
so unbelievably different. As someone who's grown a business from zero, this shit is so much harder than going into an existing business and seeing where you could grow it, right? Like most businesses, my father's included, they're not running paid ads effectively. They're not even doing any form of content, right? So that alone, like what can come into play? And also sometimes when you think about this, right? Like even if you didn't want to handle it yourself, simply existing budget allocation to better places could yield crazy returns, right? Like I sometimes go in, I remember like 7 or 8 years ago, my dad was explaining like what they spend their marketing money on. And I was like, I was laughing my ass off. Right? I was like, this shit is crazy that you're doing this stuff. This will not get you deals. But they didn't listen to me. And so what it is, like there's so many businesses that you are grossly exaggerating the efficiency of which they're running. Right? A lot of times they were the only boring business in the market. They had no competition. They built up a massive client base, and now they're a big business, even though they're run pretty inefficiently. That's like a very common story.
Yes, and the point that you just said, I want to double click on because this was the exact thesis that my friend is going in and buying these businesses on. Like this was the conversation we had, and I was kind of jealous. He was like, "I don't want to build a business from scratch.
It's hard.
Why would I want to do that? I can go out here, buy a $5 million a year business, put 10% down, and put even half of that down because I've got investors that are providing the rest of the equity, and take that business that where they don't even use QuickBooks. They're writing down all of their accounting on paper. They don't know anything about HR software. They've got people that are like not licensed to do the stuff they're doing and like all this crazy stuff going on.
So much of that.
And all I got to do is grow this 10-20% a year. Oh, well, I can literally do that by just implementing QuickBooks and
Simple
like
shit.
figuring out where the money's going.
Totally. No, that's true. That's right. And Underdog has a good comment here that I want to address. So, do you guys ever go to seminars or stuff like that to try to meet interesting people and network? When I was first starting out, I did this all the time. But when you get to a point of understanding and growth within your business, it starts to become not a positive ROI. And I've found that the most effective thing that you can continue to do is do really cool shit and do it in public. Like that's one of the things that we're doing here with this show, and it will naturally bring people to you. But now, whenever I'm just farther ahead of most people when I go to these conferences. It's not like an ego thing. There's some that if I paid a lot of money for, I'd be way farther behind. But most of the free ones, when I'd go there, there was nothing that people could help me with. Right. So it's obviously case by case. I think that depending on what you're looking to learn and depending on your existing network, but you can only talk to so many people. Right. So it depends on your situation.
Yeah. I have a weird thing with that because I love it. I mean, it's just something that I just enjoy, period. So it's like if you're that kind of person, then keep doing it. I have not, for instance, though, since I've been on this YouTube journey, done anything like that, or even since I've past couple of years, I haven't done that. But yeah, if you're new to an industry or if you're
Great
young
idea.
or new to a city, do it and do it
Yeah. And
like relentlessly.
totally. And if you're young, I would go to these a lot very quickly because you're going to build a network. And it's also people that are passionate about something and willing to work hard. Like, why do people typically say go to college? It's because you want to be around people that are bettering themselves. And I think we've gotten pretty far away from that for the most part with the university. But if you go find people that are out there doing stuff when no one's telling them to do it, that's a very good indication that they have a good head on their shoulders and they're trying to work hard. So I strongly recommend going to them. I was actually very timely. I was talking about this last night with my girlfriend, and she's like, "Oh, my brother, like he wants to make more friends." And I said he should go to these entrepreneurship meetups and these startup meetups because he knows how to code, so everyone will be all over him. He'd be the most popular guy there. He'd be the belle of the ball. And she's like, "Did you go to them?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I used to. I go to them a lot." And I thought about one that I went to in particular. And at the time, we were all like early 20s. Some of them were even like 19, and a lot of them didn't figure it out right away. But looking back on this like stupid, silly conference, I think it was called like League of Innovators, something in Canada. the people that were there are all like crazy successful now. And we were all just kids. It was crazy. So the mindset and being around those people really does matter. And also understanding that the likelihood of you hitting on your first swing is incredibly unlikely, but being the person who keeps swinging is really the point.
Yeah, one of the things you said earlier that I really loved was like the advice that you gave was to go and try to fail.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's something that you hear from people all the time, but it's like it's really important to like go and fail at stuff. Obviously, you're not in your head. You're not going to be trying to fail, but that is almost the way that you should be looking at it, because then it takes the pressure off too. It's like, well,
It's
just
fun.
do it. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you're gonna fail.
Most people live life like an armchair quarterback. They're like an armchair life liver, where they have all these theories, they have all these ideas, and they don't do shit with it. Right? Like I can't tell you how many people who have tried to tell me how to do social media marketing and they've never posted a video before.
Mm.
Right? That happens all the time because it's a great way to hide behind the pain of failure, to say I could have done this, I could have done that. When you just become an action taker, this shit's like pretty straightforward. Like it's really, really not that complicated, especially now. Like when I was starting my first business, I had to actually read blogs, guys. Can you imagine that? I had to go to
Mm.
blogs, I had to search on the internet, I had to read stuff. Now you can get it read to you by ChatGPT. Like it's never been easier to start this stuff. And there's also so many pockets. Like I guarantee you have some sort of specialized knowledge that gives you a unique advantage just to solve some problem. It may not be huge, but it can probably replace your current income. Or if you're unemployed, it can probably create your own job. Like you said, Keith, go do the thing for free and you'll get paid for it later.
Yeah, and Big
Love that.
Stepper said, uh,
Go
"Don't
for it.
call it failing." He said, "Don't call it failing." Did you call it failure when you couldn't swim or walk, or did you just keep trying?
Yes, dude, I love that. And I also say this when it comes to understanding topics or feeling dumb. It is so silly that people get angry when they don't know something. And I'll always say to them, like, how could you expect yourself to know something you've never heard before? Right? Like you haven't heard this before. You haven't done this before. That example is so good, right? You didn't even think about it when you couldn't swim or walk because you hadn't done it before. So all of these things that you have in your mind, they're like little steps of walking or learning a new skill from getting to where you want. But the problem is that on social media, it really only shows us people that are either at the finish line or people that perceptively sprinted there. Like it looks like they sprinted there. When in reality,
Mhm.
that's just not the norm.
Right.
But it's what people have seen a lot, so they expect it, and that's really where the failure comes from, is feeling like they are a failure if they're not successful right away. Whereas if you shift the approach and you just say, "I'm gonna stack this," Kevin said, "Great book, The Obstacle is the Way." Yeah, absolutely. Like,
It's
there's so many
Ryan
good books out there where
Holiday.
can help you with this. Yeah, he's great. Love Ryan Holiday. But
Right.
if you shift your perspective, there's no such thing as failure. As corny as that sounds, it's such important advice, and if the best advice I could give to anyone is get more corny in your life. Like most of the best advice, people only say it's corny because it sounds so obvious. A lot of shit really is obvious. You're complicating it in your own brain.
Yeah. Um, Corny. That kind of stuff, that kind of labeling of things. Oops. Um,
Cringe is a big
I
one
feel
for
like
the younger generation too.
yes. I feel like there was something either we talked about or that I was listening to recently around like, well, if you're being labeled as corny, it kind of comes down to like, well, what these people who are labeling you in this way, what are they doing, or where's their life, or where are they headed? And if you don't desire that, then being corny might be fantastic.
Yeah, it's 100%. And no one happy or content or confident will ever talk shit about you. So I literally had this in my life very recently where my sister was working for a guy who I used to work for. He works in the real estate field. And I thought we were friends, but I've been trying to give her free marketing advice to help grow his real estate business. Okay. And he didn't like that these weren't his ideas. So he kept shutting them down, shutting them down, shutting them down. I know objectively they're right. I'm one of the best internet marketers on the planet. I know this is right. I know a few things very well, and I share what I know with everyone. Okay. I was like, Abby's her name. I'm like, don't even listen to him. Just do it. He'll make more money and he'll be happy. Okay. I guess he like caught her a few too many times. And then he freaked out. He's like, why do you keep doing this? She's like, well, Ben told me this, this, and this. And he's like, why do you listen to Ben so much? And this is what he said next. He's like, what kind of car does he drive? Does he own his own house? Like, how much money does he make per year? And I was like, oh, you've got some bigger problems there. Right. So like, a lot of times when you're looking at people that you think you would look up to, they've got other shit going on too. So a lot of people, what brings it back to the point here is that a lot of people won't start because they're like, oh, I could never be like that guy. You probably don't want to be like that guy. And that's actually a reason why you will be successful, because when you burn bridges like that, I was literally trying to grow this man's business for free and he starts roasting me. So I DM'd him, I sent him a voice note. I was like, hey buddy, like what the fuck? Like, I'm here trying to grow your business for free. Like this stuff happens all the time. So the core point of this is even people who are your friends that you're trying to help for free, you couldn't be nicer to them. If they're not confident in themselves, they're still going to have problems, right? And they're still going to talk shit and they're still going to try to tear you down. So you really safeguard your space, right? Like who's around you and who do you listen to, right? Because like I was upset for like 2 seconds and then I just instantly went to, okay, he's a fucking loser. Right? Like, and I will give him credit. When I called him out, he did say, yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But if that's where your mind goes to right away, you've
Oh
got
yeah,
some
no, that's
deeper things you
crazy.
got to deal with.
If
Yeah.
you're an
So,
adult moving like that,
oh,
like
he's like
yeah.
nearly 40, multiple kids.
Oh yeah, no, that's terrible.
Crazy, crazy. But the whole point is that whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you've achieved, you're never going to be immune to that. And so I just view it as the cost of doing business, right? Like if people aren't talking shit like that, it's because I haven't made them not confident enough about themselves. Because realistically, why is he saying all that shit? Because he knows I know more shit than him.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be doing that if you were confident. There's no way. Like I've never gone and like roasted someone who's doing better than me, or sorry, worse than me. Why would I ever need to do that?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'll bring in some of the things that I've seen. I actually was just talking about this. Did a video on like people who are successful, quote in quotes, and like we have to be very comprehensive in the way that we try to look at someone else's success. If you're trying to look for some way to model your life after, which I think is already just a bad idea in general.
I agree.
'Cause there's always like pieces of advice that you can get from people and that you should take in the field in which they are particularly competent. One of my mentors, Coach Mike, he just put out a video a couple of days ago about like this producer guy who was a producer in the music industry, and he was talking about his safety when he was going to like these clubs. And my mentor Mike was like, okay, you can listen to this guy when it comes to music and when it comes to like finding artists and like doing all this stuff, but like when it comes to his life, right, like his whole life, like
Stop listening.
you let the rest of that stuff go. And so anyways, what I think can happen too with people is that you get successful in one of those areas of your life and then you feel qualified, to give
Mhm.
people life advice because their life is what maybe they want to some degree, or at least they've achieved some level of success in that life. And it's really important that we, especially for all my young people watching, like don't idolize people who are like monetarily successful. I lived in Miami. There were tons of people who were monetarily successful who were the worst kinds of people that if you were around them, you could lose your life. You know what I mean? Or your freedom. And so it's not really always just about uh what you consider as success in that way. You really want to look at comprehensively. Are people happy? Are people safe? Are they able to go outside and like take a deep breath of air? I mean, even if it's not that extreme, even if it's just someone who just works all day long and that's all they do, it's like, listen, is that worth having the level of money that they have? It's like that's not what this is all about, you know.
It's also really important to develop your own moral compass and one that you stick to. And life and shitty people will test how like the level of conviction that you have for your own morals and life compass and principles. But if you don't have that, then you're kind of going with the wind. And I wrote this quote down while Keith was dropping all that awesome stuff, where it says, I wrote down, how much joy gets robbed from us and progress gets stalled from pursuing things you don't even actually want if you truly understood what came with it. What you get comes with everything attached to it. It's not the thing you're obsessed with. And that is true when it comes to dating. That is true with every form of life, right? I see a lot of people who are like drooling over these women that would ruin their life. Right?
That's another great example.
Like you don't want what comes with that, right? And so that's why like I really grasp that, and especially as someone who works in business, like you start to see who gets attracted to certain kinds of people, and then like a lot of people ruin their own life because they obsess over one element of what is a tiny fraction of the whole experience that comes with that thing.
100%. My guy Wesley in the comments, he said, "We turn Miami Skyami." I don't know exactly what that means, but in general, like that just reminded me of that too. It's like, bro, like you go up and you try to talk to one of these women in Miami, like you could find yourself in one of the absolute worst positions of your life if if you let what you're seeing on the outside
Impact you.
become the thing that persuades you to be interested in a concept or an idea. And I was just thinking, I'm like, man, Miami is a place where if you're young, you can go and learn so much about humanity and life.
So
But
quickly. It I do
but
it's like social media, we've talked about this before so many times, but it really eroded humans in different ways. Like males were impacted in different ways, women were impacted in different ways. It's just led to such a shitty situation where when you find like why it's also so important to find your core principles is because it allows you to block out the noise and find people that are in alignment with that, right? Like there's a lot of people where like I see guys who have become worse people because of social media, and I see also girls have become like very different. I hate that you can't talk about this stuff without getting flamed when you're talking about objective truths, right? Like I made a video 3 years ago, I think on TikTok, on my burner TikTok account, Keith, that I talked about the differences in dating from Florida, which was not Miami. So because Miami's a lot more like Toronto, I would say.
it's a whole
It
different.
was it was northern Florida, so like a lot more chill, like more low key. Okay, and I just compared the differences between dating in Toronto and Toronto women, and then dating in Florida, and the Toronto women lit my ass up and proved my point entirely. Like they proved my entire point, right? Social media just destroyed so much of how we conducted ourselves as people. So it's definitely important to understand who you want around you. And also, like, even the people that you think you want to be around, if you get around them and you come to find that that's not actually someone that you want to be around, it's very hard to change that opinion if you've really wanted this for a long period of time. But if you don't, it'll probably impact your life very severely.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is like you can low key get brainwashed really fast. Um,
So fast.
when you're in those types of positions. And so I think, like you said earlier, it's really important. Somebody, you said it, or it was in the chat, like you got to have your moral compass like defined in life, which I don't know how you do that other than by just kind of going through and probably having these types of situations where you realize like, oh snap, that wasn't the right thing to do. But
I
um,
also I also think asking yourself
yeah,
questions is huge, Keith, too. Like a lot of people, they just on autopilot 24/7, right? And then whenever they feel emotional discomfort, they go to their security blanket. They look into this, right? And another recurring thing where forced reflection creates progress. And I was just very fortunate that like I didn't grow up with a phone because I know that I wouldn't be the same person. I wouldn't be the same level of thinker that I am. But when I had an issue or I screwed up or someone was rude to me, I would stay up all night analyzing the situation, trying to figure out what happened, what can I learn from it. That doesn't happen anymore. And so if you become the person who does that, you have such an advantage because people are also incredibly predictable when you know that they default to this. Why do you think I can do my job? It's because I understand that I actually don't need to understand that many people to understand everyone for the most part. Of course, there are so many exceptions, but most of them aren't on social media in the first place. And so it's a massive hack right there in front of you if you can go through the uncomfortable situation of having to think about what you did wrong, right? Like that's a really hard thing to do, but every bit of progress comes from doing that. And it's not easy to do, especially if you're a male. Like we're conditioned that if you're wrong, you're a loser. And I fought that a lot of my life, right? Especially if you're a competitive guy. But the second you can be the guy who's super cool with being wrong so you can be right the next time, shit gets pretty easy.
100%, man. I wanted to talk about Big Stepper. He said a
Yeah,
lot of
please.
people with money aren't actually sovereign. They might have capital, but they don't have control, discipline, or internal order. And what I want to say to that is like, this is really important for people who are trying to be monetarily successful. It's like you definitely want to have those qualities in place beforehand. Okay.
Without a doubt.
So if you're not rich and you're like, oh, I'm not successful, this and that, it's like master those things. Take care of your body, take care of your health, take care of your family, your friends, build good, deep relationships. Because what happens is let's say that's your North Star. You're going to be super successful multimillionaire. Okay, now you get there without having those things in place. And what can end up happening? I realize this about myself. I think the creator every day for the things that didn't go my way. Because if they had, I probably would have ended up like in a very bad spot in life. You know, like if you don't have these things in place and all of a sudden you've got the power and opportunity to make more decisions, but the decisions that you're making are not sound, then you can actually ruin your life and ruin the lives of others and like go into a way worse place than where you're at right now. So definitely, control, discipline, and that internal order, like having that first is foundational to even maintaining the success in the first place. And then also making sure that it actually makes your life better.
Yes, dude, that was such a good point, and I think about my own life too, where like, I had a lot of wins, and then they were typically followed by catastrophic losses in terms of my life, like in terms of crazy situations with relationships, my body. Like I've not talked about this too much on on the show here before, but I had 5 knee surgeries over the course of like 4 or 5 years that left me like bankrupted. I was suicidal every single day, right, and having to run my own business, barely could go to bed to go do enough to survive, right, and like because if I didn't have that stuff within me, I don't think I'd be here right now, right? But I thought like, okay, there's a reason why I'm here. I work on this stuff because I want to be a person that can create change, right? And I think that this show will play a big part of that over time. I think that you have a similar story, Keith, in terms of just a desire to genuinely help people, and that's quite rare. And I can say that I always felt like I would do something like this, and I always felt like it would impact a lot of people. But with that, I almost had to go through horrible experiences because if I didn't go through all that pain, I know I wouldn't be as patient as I am now. I was very impatient before. I'm selectively patient, I would say. Like I'm micro urgency, macro patience. I think that's a life skill that I definitely roll with. But all these things now, I'm like, they all became superpowers. And I was talking about this with my girlfriend again last night, where I said you can basically make life on easy mode when you become the person who convinces yourself that the excuses that others make are the reasons why you're successful, right? Like I stopped suffering so much from my knee, and I can't even begin to describe. Like I hope to have someone on like who knows the knee stuff, so I can like chat with this about them in the future because that shit was like debilitating as a man, especially because for like I think a lot of men like you take an L, whether it be financially or physically, and I took L's on both sides. But I think a lot of men they're never getting off the ground because they can't even start to make money, and we're so indoctrinated that if you're not a financial success, you're a loser. And I also fell for this trap too because I was moderately successful early on in my life. I attached a lot of my confidence to that as well, right?
Same.
So then when I'm physically unable to perform this stuff and my business starts suffering because of it, now I'm losing on both ends, right? So that made me actually care so much less about money. Like, ironically, eventually, at first, I cared so much more because I'm like, shit, I'm a loser. And then I realized this doesn't actually matter. And then that also opened me up to be willing to take risks because most success comes from your willingness to take calculated risks on a consistent basis. And so when you're the guy who doesn't give a fuck if you're poor, you're probably going to be the guy who wins. Like for my last few years building these businesses, like I also want to be very transparent with people. Is like I have businesses that bring in a lot of money, but I have almost no money because I'm building something that I hope will eventually pay me back in the long run. But a lot of these entrepreneurs, like I could flex. I have the ability, I have the credit cards where I could run stuff up, but that's just not realistic. And I don't really care. And so when you find who you are, your morals and principles, you also avoid a lot of obstacles and you don't spend money on dumb shit. Like I got this shirt from China. It was 20 bucks. I've worn it like 400 times because if someone doesn't like me because I wear a New York jersey or a jersey in general, that person's probably a loser. Right. And so when you figure out like how to determine what kind of people you want to allow into your life can be really good. Like when I met you, Keith, I knew after our first call, I was like, this guy's a gem. And I can tell your heart is good. But until you get to a place where you're comfortable with who you are, it's hard to spot that in other people. So like there is no secret sauce. You have to really go through some shit and embrace it.
100%, man. I'm supposed to run at the
Okay,
top of
let's wrap
this
up.
hour, so I
Okay.
just wanted to put that out there.
Cool.
But
Yeah. Well, we can wrap it up here. I appreciate all of you guys joining. If you're still here, make sure to click the subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll be doing another episode on Thursday. We tentatively have a guest. We'll see if it ends up coming through, but we do have a guest lined up for Thursday. So this will be the first episode of Memes and Markets with a guest. So definitely look out for that. And we appreciate you joining in so much. Keith, anything else you want to add?
nah, just really appreciate these conversations, and let us know what you think down in the comments down below. And we'll keep going. I think we should probably do another AI episode on the layoffs in particular, and talk a little bit more about like what happened and what the companies were saying. Because I had some stuff prepared, but I really just was getting lost in this conversation yet again.
Yeah. We'll definitely do another one in the next week or two. And we appreciate all you tuning in. Thank you so much. We'll see y'all on Thursday at noon. And we appreciate you so much.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Peace.